Oh, and speaking of under the weather, this was certainly refreshing to come out of Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders' office. Take a listen.
COVID lockdowns killed businesses, tore apart communities, and stunted our kids' education. And now they're talking about doing it again. So let me be clear. As long as I'm governor, Arkansas will never lock down. We will not close our schools, our churches, or our businesses. We will never make you or your children wear a mask. And we will never, ever have a COVID-19 vaccine mandate. Government should never loom larger than individual liberty in our lives. That's the principle our nation was founded on. And if the federal government ever comes to tell us to shut down again, my administration will fight to keep Arkansas free.
So there you go. Yeah, very refreshing compared to what we had the last time with Governor Asa Hutchinson, where you really honestly didn't know if everybody that didn't want to wear a mask was going to be put in camps. We definitely don't have that now. What a breath of fresh air that is. We're not going to lock down. We're not going to force masks. We're not going to force vaccines. And the biggest deal is we're not going to lock down our churches. Now, depending on how much the hysteria, if the hysteria is going to really ramp up the way it did, I honestly don't know. I think it will in liberal enclaves. They clearly want to do this again. This is, and really it's not a joke. This is now being called the election variant because 2024 is approaching. We obviously have everything that's going on with the lawfare against President Donald Trump. And every time every time there's something that happens that exposes the Bidens, there's a new Trump indictment, and we've all been witnessing this for a very, very long time. But I will say it is just refreshing. A lot of the people, by the way, we're going to find out the churches specifically who shut down for way too long. Deprived their people of meeting, and many of the congregants wanted to meet, but it was the people who the pastors, the elders that were saying no, the deacons saying no, we're not going to meet. A lot of it was leadership. We're about to find out real quick, depending on how the hysteria of the media goes, how effective their brainwashing mechanism is this time. We're going to find out real quick because there's a lot of pastors who've said, never again, we're never going to do this again, we're not going to lock down again the way we did last time. Well, they're about to run the whole operation back. The whole PSYOP is coming back, and we're about to find out whether or not the people who said never again, we should have never locked down, we're about to find that out if that really was true. Masking. I'm starting to see it though. I'm starting to see masking again. People starting to wear it again. When of course it's just, by the way, just like basically a bacteria collector for your face. And not to mention, it doesn't actually stop the virus or whatever it is from infecting other people because of the I mean, the CDC actually got caught the other day, by the way. They got caught because during all of the wildfires, the mysterious wildfires, they said that these masks won't actually block out the smoke particles. Well, the smoke particle is much larger than a teeny tiny virus. So if it's not going to help with smoke, then how does it help with? Anyway, we've been through this over and over again. But the groundwork has been laid here. I mean, I believe YouTube has new standards now where they've come out and saying that we will not allow you to say anything that is the opposite of the World Health Organization. Now, this is interesting because YouTube recently changed their terms of service to where you can now talk about election fraud because that was banned after the 2020 election. But now they're saying we don't want anybody to speak out against what the official guidelines are from the World Health Organization. So, I mean, we'll see, because that was one of the things that came with COVID. It wasn't just the medical industrial complex going full communist. It was essentially which, by the way, that was something that the people on the right have been warning for a very long time. But I don't think they actually knew. I don't think we knew how many battles we had lost to get to this point. But the other thing that came with COVID was just mass censorship. Mass censorship came with COVID. And that's where you got the familiar trope of, if it's a conspiracy theory, just wait 6 months and the media will finally report on what they called a conspiracy theory 6 months ago. Anyway, I digress. I find it interesting, this let's reset here. Let's listen again. This is Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
COVID lockdowns killed businesses, tore apart communities, and stunted
Truth.
our kids' education.
Yes.
And now they're talking about doing it again. So let me be clear. As long as I'm governor, Arkansas will never lock down. We will not close our schools, our churches, or our businesses. We will never make you or your children wear a mask. And we will never, ever have a COVID-19 vaccine mandate.
There we go.
Government should never loom larger than individual liberty in our lives. That's the principle our nation was founded on. And if the federal government ever comes to tell us to shut down again, my administration will fight to keep Arkansas free.
That's right. There we go. All right, so I find that interesting because I'm going to tie these two topics together. So what we opened with was African American studies. So I find it interesting that there were superintendents, and we need to ask ourselves the question, and I know this is I don't want this to be a blanket statement, but how come so many of the positions, like a superintendent, superintendents make really good money. How come so many of them are liberal? How come so many of them are progressive? Let me just say, how come so many of them are not conservative and are allergic to, I don't know, the Bill of Rights? Why is that? And it's not just people, it's not just superintendents, it seems to be doctors. Obviously, it's lawyers. Why is it that there are so many in our local communities, the people that get elevated to positions of, good standing, high standing, positions of power? Now, this is not true for the politicians in Little Rock, which is odd because we do have a massively red state when it comes to our representation in Little Rock. But then you go to the cities, and even though collectively, like in districts, they're overcoming the cities, we have. It just seems like, and it really, if you take the electoral aspect out of it, just take professions in general. There seems to be a lot of people who completely disagree with the worldview of the masses that they serve. And they get reminded of this. I don't know if they ever actually do realize it, but every 2 years, when they actually think they're going to get a Democrat in office from a very red district, then they get reminded that they live and work amongst people who just silently, respectfully, I disagree with this. And so I guess my point is how many superintendents were willing and ready to mask up every child, every girl and boy during the last pandemic? Okay, how many? They were eager to do it. They were eager to follow the instructions of Governor Asa Hutchinson, shutting businesses down or advising that they be shut down with, and then you have the mask mandates, and then you have the state legislature elements of it. We're actually trying to sue the governor, taking him to court for doing these things because what he was saying, what he was doing was outside of the law. Okay. How many of them were eager to follow all of those things? But now that the Department of Education comes out and says, we are removing African American studies on the basis that it's indoctrinating our kids with critical race theory, or CRT, we are removing those. We're no longer going to give you a credit for it. It's no longer going to have a code within the Department of Education. And I know this all happened and it hit the headlines 3 weeks ago, and I know I'm late to the party on this, but I feel like there needs to be a little bit of comparison here in the hypocrisy with these, these city elites who it's not about do what the government says. If the different person gets into power, then they don't want to do what the government says. And I know you could do that both ways, but Sarah Huckabee Sanders is trying to actually follow the law, whereas Governor Asa Hutchinson was not. I mean, he was just amassing as much power as he could during the COVID pandemic, like many other governors in the state across the country.